Hey everybody, welcome back to Psychotherapy Babble. Today I want to talk to you about the window of tolerance. This is a really important concept that I teach to all of my trauma clients and my people with anxiety as well, even though this is really relevant to all of us because we all have a nervous system. Okay. You probably remember learning about the nervous system in maybe high school. And what's important for us to look at is the autonomic nervous system, because within that is our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. Um, it's pretty complex. So today I'm just going to keep it pretty simple. To really water things down and keep it really simple, the sympathetic nervous system is responsible for fight or flight response, right? The parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for what we call rest and digest. Okay, that's the state that we're in when we're nice and calm. We're in our social engagement system. We're interacting with other people. We're social and we feel pretty decent, right? So let me go ahead and show you this graphic just so you can get a quick visual on it. I will link to the website that this came from so that you can see it for yourself. This is a copy that I'm about to laminate and put in my office. Okay. So the window here, when we're in our window of tolerance, we tend to feel calm, we're in control, we're not anxious, we're not tired, we're alert, and we can handle whatever life is throwing at us. So if something stressful happens, we can go, oh, well, that sucks. I don't like it, but I can handle it. I can handle it. Um, when we start to go out of our window, that's when we get what's called dysregulated. Okay, and I'll get to that in a moment. So when we are born, when we come onto this planet, we have our window, and what we go through, how we're responded to by caregivers, and so on, serves to either keep our window nice and wide, or if we go through some traumas, if we go through chronic stress, if we go through abuse, if we go through emotional neglect, the window starts to narrow. And then it becomes much, much easier to get pushed out of that window of tolerance involuntarily by life stressors, by stressful interactions with other people, and so on and so forth. So when we first start getting pushed out of that window, that's when we get dysregulated. Okay. So this is a state where we're not quite to that extreme level of upset, but we are also not comfortable and we're not happy and we know something is off. Okay. Let's show this one more time. So we can go up this way, right, into dysregulation, moving towards hyperarousal. And what that means is I'm starting to get a little agitated. I'm starting to get a little revved up. I'm starting to get a little irritable. And my sympathetic nervous system is starting to activate a little bit more than it would be beyond just being alert. And if we continue to get pushed by the stressor, the interaction, a trigger perhaps for a trauma that we've been through, then we might go into full-blown hyper arousal. Okay, and just see back on this graphic, it's got a volcano exploding. That's a really good image for this. That's rage. That's panic attack. That's I've got to run or fight right now. Okay. The opposite direction of the spectrum is going into hypoarousal. And it has that graded step down, kind of like how going into hyperarousal has that step up. Like we go into dysregulation first, and then we get into hyperarousal. We go into dysregulation first, then we go into hypoarousal. This is a freeze or collapse state. Okay. And you might feel zoned out, numb, dissociated, lose track of time, or feel completely frozen. And it's important to recognize and understand that these reactions are not voluntary on either side of the spectrum. Your nervous system is taking over for you. The good news is that we do have agency and control in how we respond to hyper or hypo arousal. Okay. One more note on that. Our nervous system actually has a hierarchy of responses that we tend to cycle through. Before we go to fight or flight, most of us have a social engagement system that we try to activate. There's also this response called fawn. Okay, that comes in here. So we try to engage our social engagement network first and see, can I, if it involves another person, can I calm the situation down? Can I placate them? Can I quell this? If that's not an option, we go into fight or flight. Now, based on your conditioning and the things you've been through, you may go straight into fight or flight. You might skip over fawn if you learned that that was ineffective and doesn't work in your situations. After we go to fight or flight, let's say if you were little, for example, and you couldn't fight, you couldn't run away, then kicks in that freeze response. Playing possum, right? Like how possums play dead. We go into a collapse state, a freeze state, because your body is deemed that that's the only way to get through the situation. Right. So if you went through something when you were small and you weren't powerful enough to fight back, and clearly you couldn't run because small children cannot run away from their caregivers, no matter how horrendous the situation is, then you're going to have to freeze and collapse. So, also, I want to add that it's important if you freeze, if you're a person who freezes and collapses, there is nothing to be ashamed of. That's your nervous system taking over. It's not a voluntary response. And you didn't do anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. That was your body trying to help you survive. Okay, so let's put that into its appropriate context. And working with a therapist can help you over time widen that window of tolerance. Of course, I would recommend working with a therapist who's not just trauma informed, but trauma trained in some kind of modality. If you have PTSD, and especially if you have complex post traumatic stress disorder or developmental trauma or borderline personality disorder. Okay, it's really, really, really important to have a therapist who's pretty adept in trauma if you want to widen your window of tolerance, but it absolutely can be done. There's lots of ways. And one of our greatest tools is just mindfulness, being aware of what's happening in our own mind and body at any given moment, being aware of what your triggers are, knowing them, and knowing how you react to these things, noticing what the signs are that you're in hyperarousal. I know for myself, if I'm mindlessly flipping through apps on my phone, going to Facebook, to Instagram, to email, to this game back and forth, I stop and check in with myself and say, what's happening? Why are you flipping through things frantically? Right? Oftentimes I'm overwhelmed and stressed and just haven't taken a moment to sit down and be with myself and take a deep breath. Okay, so being mindful, being aware is the first step in changing any of these patterns. We've got to know ourselves first. So that's the window of tolerance. Um, Knowing what it is very important on your trauma healing journey. So please see the description for the link. I will put it in there for you so that you have this to reference, as well as more information about it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your time. I hope this has been useful, and I'll see you next time.